You've got basically four quadrants of people in the way that they're ending up in their lives. You've got people who are happy and healthy. You have people who are happy and unhealthy. People who are healthy and unhappy. And then you've got the people who are unhappy and unhealthy. They probably didn't make it too far into old age. So we really want to know about the people in the happy and well quadrant of your data, and we want to know what they did. So this is the most amazing thing about the Harvard Study of Adult Development for my money, and this is what I teach and what I want our learners to really understand. What are the characteristics that people can control in their lives that are most indicative or most predictive of people ending up in the happy and well quadrant when they get old?
Yes. Okay. Now, first, let me call out what you just said, which is there is a lot of stuff that we can't control. And so some of why we end up happy and healthy later in life is through luck. Okay. But let's put aside luck and get to your question. What is under our control?
And let's make sure. Let me stop you there for a second, Bob, because there are things like choosing your parents that you're talking about, and whether or not the random luck of the draw with your health. You get cancer, or you have clinical depression, or something that actually runs in your family. So you want to take away all of that stuff and talk about the decisions and habits that people have in their lives, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And what we find are two big things. One will not surprise you. It's that if we take care of our bodies, that has tremendous benefit. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if we eat reasonably well, if we manage not to become obese, if we don't use tobacco, if we don't abuse alcohol or drugs, if we exercise regularly, if we get decent amounts of sleep, all of those things put together build a kind of bedrock of physical well-being that predict healthier aging, later decline, longer life, okay? And that, our grandmothers could have told us, right?
Okay, so now let's get to the biggie, because taking care of yourself physically, that's really important. And most people know that, although a lot of people neglect that nonetheless and just kind of hope for the best and often get bad outcomes as a result of living hope over living the prudential judgment that comes from your grandmother's advice. What is the biggie in growing old, happy and well?
Yeah. The biggie for us was the finding that being more connected to other people predicted that you would stay healthy longer and you'd be happy longer. We actually didn't believe it when we first started analyzing the data. Because yes, we pay lip service to the idea that the mind and the body are connected, but how actually could your relationships get into your body and affect how soon you get heart disease or whether you get arthritis or type 2 diabetes? We didn't quite believe it. And then other research groups started finding the same thing. And that's the gold standard in the kind of research I'm talking about. You want replication. You want studies of different people in different settings to point in the same direction. And a whole bunch of studies point to this, that it's both the breadth of our social connections, so how many people we see in a given day, in a given week, but also the warmth of those connections. What we find is that people who have at least one warm relationship they can count on, especially in times of need, those people stay healthier longer, and certainly they're happier. But in addition, what the research is finding now is that these more casual ties in our lives turn out to be important. That it's not just your nearest and dearest, it's not just your best friends, but it's the person who delivers your mail. It's the person at the checkout counter at the grocery store who you see every week. That those small, pleasant interactions are actually little boosts. And certainly we know that the broader your network, it's many times your casual ties that turn out to be the connections that help you find your next job. So there are all kinds of benefits to these casual connections in addition to the warm, close connections.
So what kind of relationships are we talking about that are the really intimate ones? Are we talking about marriages? Are we talking about friends? Are we talking about both?
All that. So what we're First of all, you do not need to be married to get these benefits. And certainly a marriage license doesn't convey them. As we know, there are many unhappy marriages that break down people's health. So, what we're talking about are connections where you feel somebody really has your back in times of need. At one point in our study, we asked people, make a list of all the people who you could call in the middle of the night if you were sick or scared. And some of our participants could list several people, and some of our participants couldn't list anybody. And what we find is that having at least one person in the world who you feel would be there for you, no matter what, turns out to provide a kind of emotional security that gets into the body and shapes health.
You called that protective. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things we think about is that relationships are emotion regulators. So, what do I mean by that? That stress is a fact of life, right? Stuff happens, things come along that we don't expect, like COVID. There are all kinds of ways in which the body gets activated into the fight or flight response. And all kinds of things happen. You know, heart rate increases, stress hormones, hormone levels rise in the blood, all of that. The body is meant to go back to baseline when the stress is removed. But what happens if you're isolated? What happens if you have a terrible day and there's nobody to talk to about it and you go home alone? What we've shown is that that stress response doesn't decrease as soon and maybe doesn't decrease completely at all. Maybe you are in low-level chronic stress mode. And what we believe with some good evidence now is that being in that chronic stress mode can gradually break down body systems. So, relationships can be stress regulators, if you will. They can help us, the good relationships, to bring the body back to its regular baseline.